Channel masking is one of my favorite techniques for creating masks, especially if you have some delicate or intricate texture that you might have a hard time getting the quick selection tool to behave well in. In this example, I would like to select the sky, and if I get the quick selection tool to try and select the sky, I'm going to have all kinds of work ahead of me. So I think channel masking is one of the most accurate and I think also best and quickest ways to make a mask. So let's go over that technique. If we go to the channels palette, the idea of creating a channel mask is you're going to look at the channels. You've decided that you want to make a mask. And once I'm in the channels palette, I'm going to click on the individual red, green, and blue channels. And if I want to mask the sky should be very bright. And then everything else that I do not want masked should be very dark. And so we're hunting for the channel that gives us the very best start on making that mask. A tip, when you are in the channels palette, I would get in the habit of making sure that you don't turn the eyeballs on and off in the channels palette. Whenever you're here and you want to preview a channel or a mask, you're going to save yourself a lot of confusion if you get used to just clicking next to the individual channel or individual mask. When you start turning on multiple eyeballs in the channels palette, you can get very scary different versions of quick mask mode. So just to keep things simple, get in the habit of clicking out there. So to start this mask, I'm going to copy the blue channel since it is the channel that looks most like the mask I want to make. I copy the blue channel. Once I've copied this blue channel, it's now safe for me to beat this thing up with any tools that I choose. And the technique we're doing is also referred to as channel chopping, because the idea is that we take a channel and then we chop it into shape by using either levels or curves. Now there's a lot of folks on the internet who like to do this technique using levels because it's fast. But if you're trying to hang on to specific information and also not have edges erode away in the chopping process, I think it's a really good idea to avoid channels and to stick with curves. So from here on out, I'm going to pull up curves by using this key command called Command M for curves. So Command M, we bring up curves. It's being applied to this safe grayscale version of the blue channel. And if we know what a histogram looks like, this helps us get started. If I want to pull out the info tool and figure out the separation areas of this mid gray, I would like to get quite a bit darker. And then these light grays, I'd like to get quite a bit lighter. I can also see that on the histogram. I'm going to just bump my highlights and drop my shadows. The reason I want to measure those is I want to figure out where they are so that I can put that dividing line of my curve right on the area that I want, and I can get a little bit more accurate separation. I want to maintain these dark mid-grays and get this mid-gray to get quite a bit lighter. So by paying attention to where they fit tonally, you can do a little bit better job chopping them up with curves. I'm going to hit Command M one more time. The key to creating a good channel mask is to use 2 and even 3 separate applications of curves, to not be in a hurry and to sort of pay attention to the edges. If I go too quickly, you can see I'm losing some of those needles that I want to hang on to, and I'm also making these mountains go away. So this is the reason that we want to use 2 or 3 applications. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. I don't want to go too fast. I don't want these tiny little details inside those needles to fill in. I'm going to Command M one more time. And I think we are about as good as we can get. So I'm going to need to do a little bit of brush work. And if you know how to chop and do a little bit of brush work, you're going to be able to make a really, really accurate mask. So when I do a little bit of cleanup with a brush, we're going to use an advanced technique. We're going to set the regular paintbrush to overlay blending mode. So select your brush. Up here next to the menu, you'll normally see this. Open that menu up, scroll down, and select overlay. Overlay blending mode takes anything that is above 50% gray and makes it lighter, provided that you're painting with a white brush. You'll notice I can clean up these white areas here, and if I go into that black area, you'll notice something cool. I don't affect anything that's dark. So if I need to clean up white areas, I can use a white overlay brush. Okay, I want to stick away from those edges just right now. Okay, so I think the best way to proceed is to try and get the dark things darkened up the way that we want and then use the white brush. So I'm going to switch the foreground color over here on the left in the toolbar to gray. I'm also working a little bit too quickly using a pure white brush. The way that you really want to do this is to set the opacity somewhere between 20 and 30% and use a larger brush at about 30-40% and then just use the outer 10% to either darken or lighten the area that you'd like. You'll notice it's kind of like magic. I want to darken this edge. If I'm like being a little bit sloppy and I'm kind of spilling up here and I'm darkening that, it's really simple. I hit the X key to exchange the foreground color black for white, and then I spend a little bit of time walking that edge back, okay, inside these needles, etc., etc. So I'm not going to go to the full. I'd spend maybe 5 or 10 minutes getting this mask exactly perfect and painting like this. But I'm going to speed the process along. So I'm just going to hit mostly the dark areas. We'll darken them up. And whenever you've got decent contrast, it does a pretty good job of darkening, provided you're using multiple brush strokes. It'll darken in a pretty quickly. I just want to hit those outer edges that I want to turn black. A little bit bigger brush, use more of the edges. A little bit smaller brush, do a little bit of cleanup. Okay, so we walk the edge back and forth like this. And I'm just going to kind of speed this along and pretend that I'm doing a really decent job. Once I get all of my edges done, you'll notice I'm not really paying any attention down here below this horizon. Once I get all the edges in a nice position of being just the right contrast, and all my whites are cleaned up. Okay, I'm going to say that we're fine up here. I'm going to switch the brush back to normal brush. I'm going to use a large hard brush at 100% opacity. I'm holding down the Control and Option keys and also moving the mouse left to make the left to right to make the actual brush bigger, and then up and down to make the brush softer. So I want a pretty big hard brush. And then I just finish off here, all the way underneath. We're going to say that this is perfect. And then I get the rest of this mask completely dark. Okay, we probably still want to do just a little bit of a check and a little bit of cleanup inside Quick Mask mode. So I'm going to call this Sky 1 so I don't get confused. This is the first attempt at making a final mask. I'm going to now, there's several ways I can load this as an active selection. I can go to the main menu and choose Select, Channel, Mask, blah, blah, blah. Let's do the shortcut, which is to simply activate the mask, hold down the Command key, and mouse click on it. Now you'll see marching ants. That means I've loaded this as an active selection. I'm going to the Layers palette. And whenever I go from Channels palette to Layers palette, I want to make sure I don't get confused. So I always click just to the right of the global RGB channel, and that turns on all channel view. I now go back to Layers. I would like to go to Quick Mask. The keyboard shortcut is Q. And so now I can see if there's any more painting that I need to do. And if I was doing this while trying not to make a video, I would clean up these mountains quite a bit, just a little bit more of an edge. And then here, you'll notice I really didn't pay much attention to this area. That's because it is a very simple shift brush click to clean up that area. And then the rest of that is pretty much squared away. So anytime you get a nice straight line, like the lines of this stop sign, I'm going to mouse click there. I will follow the brush by shift clicking. And then that is taken care of. Okay. All right, this area I've really been ignoring. I think there's sort of a natural transition that's happening. Most of this is dark. I kind of don't care if there's a little bit of gradient happening here. In fact, it's actually kind of advantageous. All right, so I think we're good. We're going to say that we've done a really good cleanup. Because I've done an excellent job cleaning up this mask, I'm going to go back to the channels palette, and I'm going to click on the little square button at the bottom, our Save Selection as Channel button, and I'm going to save this mask now that I've done the cleanup. I'm going to call it, double click, and call it Sky Finish. Okay. Once I've done that, I will take the initial one, Sky 1, and I'll throw it in the trash. So here is my hard-edged and finished mask. We're going to say that it's finished. I'm now going to load this into an active selection again, and I'm going to go the go to our Refine Edge command. Again, Command click, All Channel View, back to Layers, and normally if I've got a selection tool selected, I can go to the Select and Mask menu. If you don't, if you're like me, you're using the hand tool, you don't see it, the keyboard shortcut is Command Option R. And I like to work most of the time in the quick mask type view called Overlay. I'll occasionally want to double check by going on Layers. That gives us a really nice preview of what's going on with our edges, how well we're doing here. But for most of the process of refining our edge, I'm going to leave it in the quick mask mode. I'm going to go into 100% magnification. These are the settings I usually like to start with, somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 pixels. I will uncheck Smart Radius for the moment. I don't like to use a lot of smoothing. You don't really need it with this technique. If we're doing this correctly, we need a very minimal amount of feathering. So I'm going to set that to 0.2. I start out with about 15, maybe 20 on the contrast. You'll notice that it's sucking into the edges pretty well. Now, if there are areas where I've missed, or perhaps I've lost a little bit of a leaf, one of the things that we can do is get our brush out. Okay, this is the Refine Edge brush, and the way that this works, I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger. I want to brush some of this masking out into those delicate leaf areas, and to do that, I'm going to start from an area that is masked and then just drag a brush stroke out. And I actually think having this stuff partially selected is pretty good. That's something you're going to have to work out on an individual basis. But if I've missed anything, you'll know that having a fast computer really helps. You'll notice the edges get really fuzzy until each brush stroke gets complete. It's one of the reasons I turn the Smart Radius off. Okay, so you can see that it's feathering out there very slowly. Once this is done processing, I'm going to go back and turn on Smart Radius. Command 0 to go to on-screen view. We're going to say that this looks fabulous, that it's right on the nose with each one of these little individual needles and links of chain. I now hit OK. And now I'm going to bring up the curve adjustment layer that I would like. I want to brighten this and remove a little bit of blue. So I'm going to brighten the whole entire sky and maybe specifically the shadows just a little bit more. And I feel like the whole thing is a little bit too blue. So I'm going to take down 2 or 3 points of blue from the highlight and maybe about the same from the shadow. Okay, we'll let it be just a little bit dark. All right, so that is channel chopping, and good luck.